Well, good evening, everybody, in the counselling research community of practice. Unfortunately, we haven't got anybody attending today except for your AI note takers. But I thought I would do this anyway, given it runs very logically from the first one, and many members might be interested in listening to this recording, despite the fact that they weren't able to turn up to tonight's live community of practice. So I'm going to record this and paste it so that we all can take advantage of what I'm going to be speaking to you about today. So thanks everybody for tuning into this, the recording of this meeting. And as I said, it's this is the National Heads of Counselling and Psychotherapy Education's Research Subcommittee, which is where the community of practice was born, and this community of practice is a gathering of people, practitioners, academics, students interested in learning everything about research. Last year, the theme was all about PhDs, how to get there, what they are, etc. And this year's more about how to refine your already honed clinical skills in the therapy room and fine-tuning them so they are suitable for collecting data in research and publishing, etc. Last community of practice meeting that we had back in February, I think it was, we talked about fine-tuning your case notes, your clinical case notes, as well as your reflection, your self-reflection notes, and fine-tuning them so they're suitable as qualitative data collection pieces that can be analysed for thematic analysis or something similar to that. So we're extending on that. We're again talking about data collection this time, but we're going to talk about collecting quantitative data, but slightly different. And I won't go any further until I go into this PowerPoint or this whole presentation, and you'll understand. But essentially today's session's called Defining and Tracking Change in Practice, and we're going to concentrate on those ideographic measures that are really suitable to single case designs. And I'll go into them in much more depth as we progress. I'd love it if you had any questions, but no one's here. So please, if you're listening to this and there's questions, feel free to email me. All right, let's get going. So yeah, I talked about using quantitative surveys, but there is a problem, as you know, with those standard sort of quantitative surveys. And the problem is that they're the what's called the normothetic fallacy. That is, assuming everyone experiences depression, for instance, and for example, the very same way. Counsellors don't work in that space. We very much understand the person as a unique person and develop a relationship with them and work with the problem or their form of depression, rather than this idea that there's this one type of depression. Another problem is this sensitivity, generic measures like the Beck Depression Inventory, etc., that are commonly used, or the K10, often miss small, meaningful functional steps. And those small, meaningful functional steps are the things that counsellors are interested to. And really, are they relevant? You know, does the client really care about their score on question 4? I'm sure not. So, so the solution to these problems, normothetic fallacies, the lack of sensitivity and lack of relevance, is using ideographic measures. That is, quantitative measures and standardized measures, but they're tailored to the client, the individual client sitting in front of you. So we're going to talk about 2 of these ideographic measures today. All right, the first one is called the Goal Attainment Scaling, or the GAS. Its origin is it was the reference for this is in the reference list, Karesic and Sherman in 1968, and it was developed for mental health, the space of mental health. It is a 5-point scale, and it has been standardized, and it for predicting future attainment of a client's goal. That client's goal is client written, client chosen. And the benefit of this GAS is it allows comparison across diverse clients and goals, because you convert the score to a T-score, and no matter what the goal, the GAS is the same, and it converted to T-scores, you can compare your clients and goals across time. So it is, that's what I mean by standardized and normalized. And it is a gold standard. It is used quite widely in rehabilitation and therapies to measure that person's personal success. So yeah, and I do have a example or a handout of the GAS. So any of you listening to the recording who wants those handouts, please feel free to email me. I'm more than happy to share them with you. All right, so let's keep going. Essentially, the GAS is a 5-point scale. It's scored on a 5-point scale from -2, which is much less than expected, and 0, which is expected outcome, or what that outcome is defined by the client, and +2 is much better than expected. All right. And definitely when the client themselves are nominating what is that goal that the goal attainment scale is going to be applied to, their job is to make sure that the goal is smarted. In other words, it's specific. That is, the actual goal is an observable behavior, not just feelings, things that can be observed. They are measurable. So in other words, they're countable or distinct somehow, like a frequency count. They're attainable. So level 0 must be a realistic description of expected level of that goal. Timely. So you do the GAS within a time bound, hoping that at the deadline there has been a measured improvement in that goal along that scale of -2 to +2. Each of those points, -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2, are equidistant. So the steps between the levels should be of equal difficulty. The effort to get from 0 to 1 is the same as the effort to get from 1 to 2, for instance. And yeah, I'm just getting messages from these note takers. I will ignore them, sorry. And finally, a dimensional. We measure one goal at a time. We don't have it with double or triple goals. So yeah, so we smarted the goal that the client is actually trying to achieve in therapy and we measure our achievement of that goal using GAS. All right, so here's an example. Sam's social anxiety. We want to know as practitioners that if what we're doing for Sam is working. So at regular intervals, perhaps at the end of every second session, we ask Sam to rate where he is on the GAS scale from -2 to +2. So he has gone himself and defined each of those numbers. At 0, he would score himself 0 if he attends one social event and speaks to one person. If he did that at the end of when he was reporting back at a session, we would score a 0. If there was a week where he leaves the house but avoids speaking to anyone, we would score that -1. If he actually fails to leave the house, we would score -2. Okay, -2 being the baseline, as you see. 0 is the actual goal, achieving the goal. But if we actually exceed that goal, like he attends the event and speaks to 3 people, we would give him 1 point. And finally, attends the event, enjoys the event, stays late and exchanges numbers. That's definitely a +2. So you can see how the GAS has applied here for Sam with his goal of overcoming his social anxiety. And Sam himself has defined, using the SMART rules, each step in those 5 steps in the GAS. And in so doing, the practitioner can measure his progress over time and use those scores and use it as evidence of progress in therapy. All right. Now, so yes, we do have to calculate the score, and this slide looks super busy and complicated, but please don't let it scare you. This slide's basically saying there is a formula to convert the raw score of the GAS to a T-score. A T-score is a common statistic that you can then use that to compare to other people who have also used the GAS. It generally means if they get a score of 50, they're at the mean, and the of the T-score has a standard deviation of 10. So you can then, so if someone scores 50, they're very much average. If someone scores 60 when they've converted it to T-scores, then they're 1 standard deviation above average, etc., etc. You don't need to know how to put that formula there into action. I've indeed created a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet, where you can just put GAS scores in there and it will convert the GAS scores into a T-score for you. All right, as you know, if your T-score is 50, your goals were met, which is great. If your T-score was above 50, your goals were exceeded, and that's a really good outcome to get. So yeah, so just to highlight that the GAS is standardized, can be converted to T-scores, and these can be very much a publishable outcome and demonstrated statistical demonstration of your success in therapy. All right. Okay, that was the GAS. So now I'm going to talk about the PSYCHLOPS. This is another way of evidencing ideographic changes or goals defined by your client as what they want to measure and not something that's defined by the measure itself. For example, the Beck Depression Inventory. It's faster than GAS. It's another one. It's publicly available and it's very highly client-centered. The structure is that the client writes the problem, similar to the GAS. Then the client rates the effect of the problem. And then the client writes the functional difficulty of the problem. Again, I've got examples of PSYCHLOPS for you should you need copies. Now, finally, there are some scales, as you know, you probably already use when you're doing feedback informed treatment, FIT, and we often use SRSs and ORSs. You can use these too, but no, they're not ideographic. You can't define your client's actual personal goals. You've got to stick to the questions in SRS and ORS, but they're perfectly good to use too. But it's good to know that you do have the GAS and the PSYCHLOPS, which can be tailored to the specific goal or problem that your client has come to see you about. All right. All right. Now, what do you do when you've collected all these numbers, either by the GAS, either by the PSYCHLOPS, or by the SRS or the ORS? What do you do? First of all, we plot our raw scores on a run chart. And this is so you can visually see the trends over time. You're looking at level of the, when you track them over time. So the score up on the x-axis here would be, if you're using the gas, -2 down here, 0, +2, and then a time along here, session 1, session 2, session 3, session 4, and then you plot them as you go. And you will see ups and downs, as you know, with SRS and ORS. Some sessions are good, some sessions are bad. But what you are looking for is overall, what is the trend? Is there a slope? And despite the levels and the ups and downs, is there a trend where it's generally the slope is increasing, which is what you do want to see. And you also want to, it also helps you look at the variability. Statisticians would call this standard deviation. Is the line stable and erratic, or is the ups and downs of equidistant from the normal line, etc.? So we're looking at, so these are the sorts of data we're looking for. You can see here in the orange line, in this example, this client was going pretty bad towards the end. Something happened. There was some sort of tear or some setback in their goal, and they scored -1 that week, but went up to 0 the next week. Yeah, so, but they had a very good week up here. So yeah, so that's the first thing you do with your scores. You will plot them along a visual graph such as this. All right, this works really well for a particular type of method that you might use, a well-known, robust method of evidencing change in research, one called the single case experimental design, or the SCED. So generally it says here A-B design, but what would be best is A-B design, I would say. A meaning the baseline and B meaning the intervention. So you might be doing a measure. You're the researcher and your client is a single case, so you've got one client, and you might be measuring the effects of your intervention, whatever your intervention, let's call that business as usual, your counselling modality, on a client. Let's say his name is Sam, and the client's come to see you about procrastination or something like that. So you start measuring at day dot, but you're just doing perhaps relationship building at this stage, assessment. So, and so your gas scores are pretty much steady. No trend upwards. They're not going downwards. We're just doing assessment. Then maybe at session 5 here, the intervention starts. We hit the B mark and we continue to measure, but you start seeing a trend where there's improvements in Sam's own scoring of his progress and improvement for his procrastination. Now, to really see if your intervention is having an effect, you would probably put another line there and go back to A, baseline. So just start doing relationship building work again and see if your gas scores start dropping and going down. And if they do, that's very much showing that whatever the intervention you did in this B section is definitely having an effect. And for ethical reasons, once you've demonstrated going back to A that your scores are dropping again, and you're demonstrating that your intervention is definitely having effect, ethically speaking, you should return to B and do the intervention again, finish off your treatment, and then you've got a beautiful A-B trend design going on, where the B, you see the scores going up. That is a beautiful way, using SCED, way of demonstrating that your intervention is having a significant effect on the client's problem and improving their outcomes. Okay. The ABAB is rigorous as well, as it says here. It's very much considered scientifically rigorous because you establish a stable baseline before the intervening. And then by doing A and B again afterwards, you're definitely proving some sort of causality there. That is, the intervention was the cause of the improvement over time. I'm hoping that makes sense, but that's how you visually demonstrate, I suppose, or how you visually display your GAS scores or your PSYCHLOPS scores over time. And if you're going to do this, write it up in a publication, you would be showing this graph in your results section. All right. Always, just because you're using standardized measures doesn't mean that you're devoid of reflexivity. As a researcher and slash therapist, you need to continue to be reflexive in your measurement. So looking out for your researcher bias there. Beware of setting goals that are too low. That is, you look successful all the time because they're so easy to achieve, or indeed too high. You're aiming way too high that they're not realistic. So make sure the definitions at the -2 up to the 2 mark and everything in between are realistic and achievable. Also be reflexive in regards to with your client. Always collaborate. Don't define the points for him, your client, and don't let the client do all of the defining. He needs input from you, so it must be a co-constructed to be valid. The client defines success, not you, but you certainly make sure it's realistic, and he will need help. All right. There are ethical, like everything, there are ethical considerations in the use of the GAS and the PSYCHLOPS as ways of quantitatively measuring success with the client's own goal in therapy, and that the measurement is sometimes measurement is intervention. By asking the question, how are you, when the client knows the answer is going to be monitored and it's part of research, changes their answer. They might want to please you. They might have this bias inside them that wants you to succeed. You know, they feel like proud to be one of your lab rats, so to speak. So do be careful that when the client knows, and they will, that you're actually researching the sessions with them, there might be this false positive, so to speak. There's a feedback effect as well. Monitoring can improve outcomes or demoralize if progress is slow. So again, that's related. So being aware of that feedback effect and making sure there is always consent. Research consent is very separate from your treatment consent. So make sure the client does understand that consenting to treatment does not necessarily mean they're consenting to research. You have to outline both of those goals and get consent to both. All right. Let's turn these this data that we're collecting, the numerical data, into publications. So like I said, you've maybe got a GAS chart now. You've been collecting GAS scores, you've plotted them on a chart, and you've actually also been collecting your clinical notes, but doing it in a way that they're robust and ready for research. That is, your SCO notes. Refer the previous recording to learn all about SCO notes. With that data, that's actually very, very rich data. That's quantitative data and qualitative data. You very much have a publishable case study. Written up properly, that is a bridge to publication. Sorry, some more pops here. Very much. It's an evidence-based case study, and journals will accept this exact format. It's very robust and data rich. You've collected it properly. You've reflected on it. It's ethical, and it's robust, and therefore the data is beautifully ready to be written up for publication. So very much bridging to publication. So what sort of research types are supported? with these these ideographic style quantitative measures. As I already mentioned, the SCED, or the single case experimental design, by administering the gas or the Cyclops repeatedly. For example, weekly, you generate a time series data set. As I said earlier, you can visually analyze the slope and of improvement, and that improvement using run charts or statistical process control charts can evidence statistically an improvement over time. It also, this sort of data can support N=1 trials, otherwise known as case studies, or indeed in the quantitative field, N=1s, similar to what I said, that A, B, A, B. As the notes say here, if you do introduce a specific intervention, that is the B part, at week 4, you can observe if the gas score slope changes specifically after week 4, which supports that causal inference, that mindfulness training is having an effect on the problem. But to be ethical, we need to return back to A to C to indeed prove that the retraction of the intervention takes away the benefits, I suppose, having on the goal. And once we've demonstrated that, we go back to the intervention for the client's sake. Yeah, and indeed, if you're into quality program, quality improvement stuff, not necessarily research, just rather program evaluation, you want to demonstrate on your website that what you do works, the GAS or the Cyclops is a great way to evaluate your what you do, your program, your counseling program. So it's a really good way of definitely promoting your practice. So there's some ways that you can use the GAS or the Cyclops scores in your practice. Now, I said you do have to, after your introduction and you're writing your methodology, who you measured and how you measured, what type of method you used, you might write a paragraph that looks like this, okay? Outcomes were monitored using the Goal Attainment Scaling, GAS, by Kuresic and Sherman, 1968, which is an ideographic measure sensitive to individual change. 3 goals were co-constructed with the client during the intake phase, session 1 and 2, and outcome levels were operationally defined on a 5-point scale ranging from -2, which was the current baseline, to +2, the most favourable outcome, with 0 representing the expected treatment effect. GAS scores were assessed weekly. Raw scores were transformed into standardised T-scores, which have a mean of 50 and a standard deviation of 10, to facilitate visual analysis of the therapeutic trajectory over a 12-week intervention period. Visual analysis examined level, trend and variability across the baseline A and intervention B phases. And I would finish that off with phases of a SCED study or something like that. So that's a way of writing up the use of GAS and or Cyclops in one of those types of methodologies I mentioned earlier. All right, so that's the end of today's recording. This actual slide lists all the papers that I referred to populate today's presentation. I'm hoping it makes sense. As usual, as I said, my goal is to just fine-tune your existing therapeutic skills in the therapy room, and today's was maybe fine-tuning your FIT skills or your feedback-informed treatment skills. You already probably are using ORS or SRS, which are great, and you can use them. But today's recording is all about introducing you to some others that can be fine-tuned to your clients' own goals that they bring into the room. All right, so and the last point is that using those tools in a robust way is very, very publishable, robust, credible, and suitable for research. So thank you again. I'll certainly look forward to any questions that are coming my way. And again, if you want copies of the handouts for today's recording, please email me. I am more than happy to share. So thank you. All right. Let me finish off by finishing the recording.